now that we're nearly done with this game, what are your thoughts on it? Because it has occurred to me... Hang on a sec. Yeah, it has occurred to me... Because when we did Batman, I was like, I remember really liking this, and then that was a lot of fun.
This game is
and this is a game
bit...
that I like Batman. Pretty equally, I would even
really?
say. I've played them both the same amount. But I realized this is very much a game that requires focus, and it is focus we have not given. So I'm like, I think you're probably missing most of the stuff that I liked about it, because it's like it's meant to be like chin strokey, interesting plot twists and stuff that most of the time we skip over. I mean, I also do like the gameplay of it. Hang on. I felt like I saw some screen tearing on then. Oh, you're rude. I'm gonna be paranoid. I mean, no one's gonna see me do this, but I don't like that I have to do it. It's set to the... Okay, I've got the settings that should mean screen tearing stays off. Whether or not it does is apparently up to fate. I don't know what the correct way to go is either, but we're going. I do like this gameplay. Like, I think the gameplay is fun.
I will tell you that at least from somebody who apparently didn't pay as much attention to it this time through as far as the playthrough,
well, obviously.
It has felt very... monotonous may not be the right word. It has felt a bit belabored. That's a better word.
Well, because again, I don't think we've been paying attention. Holy crap, there's a lot of people! There's a lot of people! Like a lot! No, why do I have to go so slow? If only The Walking Dead had zombie
they seem a
like
little,
this, that
they
you could
seem
just
a little
use
zombie-ish. What was with that? They were all
they're
it was almost like I Am Legend a little bit.
We clearly, this is how little we're paying attention, because it was in the last episode, which I guess was a month ago, which we'll get into. But
no need to get into it. It was my fault.
Well, okay, that was all I needed you to say. Fine to speak with Seraph. Oh no, I did it again! I left my boss to die. I keep forgetting about that.
I thought you were supposed to go back for the boss. Oh yeah, that guy.
Well, I mean, I guess we could pad the game out even more, since that's what you like. You like how padded the game is.
I didn't say I liked it.
Well, I agree. That's what I have also felt in watching it back. I'm like, without paying attention to it, a lot of the appeal of it kind of falls by the wayside. I do still like this gameplay style.
It's difficult for us, and this may be less so for the audience. Okay. I'm saying...
Statistically speaking, the record bears that out. It's not that difficult for me.
I wasn't talking about the game. Thank you. So now that we've got that off your chest, anything else you've got two of?
Nipples. Since we're talking about my chest, what interest do you have in my chest? I don't have two of anything else on my chest. All the twos I have are elsewhere. I think.
I think I have probably also suffered from the fact that there is a degree of immersion you miss when you aren't able to have the volume.
That's what my point was. Well, it wasn't even the volume, because with Batman,
volume is part of it as far as...
Yeah, but the volume had to be down for Batman too, and I think Batman is just... It requires less focus. Uh-oh, here's the crappy final boss. This is going to take us forever.
Is this going to be another one of those...
This is the final
book. What? Is this going to be another one of those shock and awe things where the people have...
know what you mean by that, so...
Well, I think this game has... Okay!
It turns...
Has set up...
It turns Geigery.
What is going on?
It's Geiger-esque.
It's a bit more than that.
No, this is exactly Geiger-esque.
It's
Essentially a Matrix style using human brain power for computation or something like that.
Okay.
Quantum computers.
I don't know. Those subtitles are too small and the audio's turned down, so we're proving our point yet again.
Use it to hack.
That we
I
don't
just
know.
think.
But she's gonna merge with the computer because that's a smart thing
But
to
see,
do.
so most
So-
of these bosses have been difficult not because of themselves, but because of the weird environment they have.
Well, also we
about.
are on the hardest difficulty setting too.
Well, that makes me feel a little bit better.
Let's be honest.
You've said that every time, so I know
Much,
how
not much. It's only a.
So essentially, she gets plugged into like the reboot of the Animus from that Assassin's Creed movie, and I don't know why she does that because apparently that means that she's like one with the computer because she wanted to do that.
And the computer is.
Again, I'm sure that we would have understanding because I forget. It's been a while since I played this, so I don't know. I forget exactly what it is she's wanting to.
She is one with the machine.
She's trying to control.
With her.
She's one with the machine, and the machine is with her.
I just said that.
Well, you didn't say it right.
I did say it. Just that.
I don't. Didn't catch you. Because I don't know what this computer is that she's trying to gain access to.
Security alert.
Yeah, I feel bad because
This has taken a very odd turn, and it's okay.
Yeah. Well, anyways,
It's a
we're demonstrating
Her
exactly my
weird
point because when we're
upside
paying
down,
attention.
blindfolded nonsense is getting a little 50 Shades for me.
I don't think that's how 50 Shades went.
Tertiary power.
What?
I know the reputation it has. I don't think it went this hard. Did it go? Did it?
I'm fairly confident it did.
I don't think there was any weird plug-in your brain into machine nonsense.
Well, maybe not that, but
What
still.
does this do? Okay, I'm gonna hack this in the middle of the boss room. My point, I think we're demonstrating the point, which is that it is more engaging. Okay, the computer can shoot. Okay. So the computer screen did not protect me from bullets. Alright, well, over to you. We're gonna have to find a better setup stuff because I'm
Alright.
cramped in this weird chair now. My point that's being demonstrated is that the game does require a certain degree of focus that we have not given it, and thus I don't think we've gotten as much out of it as I usually do.
I have not gotten as much out of it. It's clearly you've failed me.
Well, that might
You have failed me, Anakin. You have failed me.
that might, I don't know, I feel like there's a lesson to learn for the future, but I don't know what it is. What? Where are... Oh, okay.
Did it go all the way? Where did it go?
We went back to after we talked to this guy. Why did it not start me? Hang on, what did you click?
I didn't click a thing.
Because
I
this
didn't
is...
do out.
Well, because, I mean, I don't think we've lost that much progress, but I mean...
Okay, where am I headed then?
I mean, just follow the map, I guess. But I got started right when we went on to... Because, I guess, hey, you could save the boss this time, instead of killing him like I do. I don't think... Well, he might actually die. I don't actually know.
Okay.
You're gonna run into zombie fellows.
I'm picking up several glimmers,
Am I?
but there's too
Picking up some...
I
We're on our own this time.
on your own, Jensen.
Where's the
I don't know.
boss?
Down the level, I think. And then we gotta sneak. And do something. I don't know why it's done that, because normally if you click continue, it takes you to the most recent save, so don't ask me. But, so yeah, is there a lesson to learn about how we should do this in the future?
I don't know.
Well, if there is, it's not forthcoming, so.
It is. It's not obvious.
I need a place to put this I
Hey.
feel like this is going to be loud. And it also seems unstable, but whatever. I don't know. Because if the whole point is like we're going to experience games that are good, then it might take, some actual focus to let the games be good. Just gonna murder a whole bunch of people who are out of their mind. Oh, okay.
What I enjoy. It's
Well,
actually,
I think we've pretty firmly established that we're in the bad. That we're sort of gonna get the bad ending. Not exactly. I mean, kind of. Because I've never actually done.
I didn't realize this was so moralistic in its.
Well, the
thesis.
ending is very blunt in a way that a lot of people criticize because it is sort of like, all right, pick how you want it to end. Do you want to be good or not?
Well, that's kind of how Force Unleashed was too. But I loved that game for what it's worth.
Well, no, because if the bad ending, literally you die. So that was effectively their way of saying,
you
don't be an idiot.
Suck for being bad.
Like, this has multiple endings, and he sort of... Because from what I gather, there's sort of several layers of moral choice. Because the first moral choice is whether or not we off people. Because you could set out from the beginning... Yeah, see, that's weird that I don't... Tower section. I'm confused by some of this. Huh. Well, that's weird. Apparently I'm not going to get that option back. Oh, okay. Well, I didn't need to... I'm loading the exact save I'm already on. Well, I was saying something, was I? It's gone.
Just the idea that we
Talk about life and board games and...
Proper due.
This game?
Yes.
Oh, moral systems, yes. So there's the option that we could, like, use non-lethal methods only. Apparently that affects the ending you get, because there's technically 3 choices at the end. And literally it basically boils down to how do we solve the current crisis, which is either, like, one of them is basically to self-destruct this whole station that we're on. Because essentially... What? Now I'm in a different spot. Why are all the autosaves different? I'm confused. Or maybe was this your autosave from what you just did? Did this just save now?
Maybe.
I don't know. I'm going to try the pacifist run because these people, it's not their fault. They're just coked out of their brains against their will. Ah, okay. Bad coke, bad coke. It's Woodstock.
Bad coke, la 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 la.
Get me through the door. No, zombies for me today. Oh boy, because basically because essentially what's his head?
Anti-Woodstock.
Well, no, wasn't it the Woodstock? One of the Woodstock.
Woodstock.
That's the other thing. Woodstock, wasn't it like the one year that a whole bunch of riots broke out because there was like bad drugs?
What?
That's what I heard. There's something because it wasn't the original Woodstock. It was like one of the Woodstock revival attempts, but it kind of didn't go anywhere, and it ended up. It's like there was some less than
reputable people.
But it wasn't like, because obviously there was drugs and stuff at the first Woodstock, but it was like whoever supplied them the second time around wasn't kosher or something. This is what I've heard. Sorry, I don't want to kill you, but your free will is overridden. Okay, this was the right way up a second ago. The map told me to come this way. Ring around the box with the guy. Okay, I'm slowing down. For real. I don't know where I'm going. And I'm being chased by crackheads. There we go.
Trying to squirt me with fluids.
I can't make a point today. You want to take over making points? Because I can't seem to make this point I'm trying to make. This isn't the door I need to go to. This is the door I came
about
from.
the moral issue still, I believe. Yeah.
Right, because the guy with the big knife, because this is, again, the game is trying to make a point where it's like the guy is saying, I made the joke last time that it's essentially the plot of Incredibles 2. It's like this guy thinks that augmentation is too dangerous, so he's essentially staged an augmented crisis where it's like a bunch of augmented people went nuts so that people would distrust augmented people and then they'd outlaw it or something.
I think you're thinking of 3.
There is no Incredibles 3, so I don't know what you're thinking. There are only 2 Incredibles movies.
Well, what am I thinking of?
I don't know.
But I'm saying you were talking about
I said it's the plot of Incredibles 2 is basically what the guy in this game is doing.
What's augmented in Incredibles 2? What I can't
Not
remember.
augmented, it's the superheroes. What I'm saying, it's the same kind of point where he distrusts augmented people.
Oh, gotcha.
And therefore he's trying to incite an international incident that will basically force people to reject augmentation. Because he's a bit of a prig. And so that's his whole shtick, and our solution to the problem is multiple fold. We could essentially reveal to the world what happened, which will sort of, in some ways, that'll prove his point, because he'll get the effect that he was after, except he'll be exposed. So it's like we'll basically leave it up.
People can actually make up their own minds.
Yeah, that's basically one of the endings, is we just reveal everything,
libertarian.
let people decide for themselves how it's going to go, and then the other option is we could essentially broadcast his specific message, which is like, oh, augmented people went nuts, and isn't that wild? We should do something about it. And then the other option is basically we could just nuke the whole station and let nobody really know what happened. Okay, apparently this is the way to go.
Seems sensible to me, but I mean...
To nuke the station?
Sure.
I mean, okay. Why, though?
It's a bit of a cosmic reset in that you just go, no
it
one
doesn't
else
kill...
needs to suffer from
it doesn't. No, okay, this is like a small offsea platform. This is not like we're not nuking the whole city. There's going to be people left who are just going to have the question of, like, what happened to all the augmented people and why did that guy die? It's essentially, basically, we're just going to leave people to figure it out on their own. Rather than, I think the most sensible
so you might as
solution...
well just shoot straight with it.
Yeah, that has always seemed like the most sensible solution to me. But that's not only... or rather, that's not the only moral dilemma, because the first moral dilemma happened way at the beginning when we basically decided, yeah, we're going to off some folks. Because I think if you go through the whole game, strictly peaceful, and you don't kill anybody, and you only use, like, the non-lethal weapons...
Which is what?
The tranquilizer guns and some various other choices. But effectively, Adam gets all preachy at the end. He's like, but can I really say that, I know what's right when I've been killing people for this? And it feels a little... Again, people criticize it because it does feel a little bit heavy-handed at the end. Because it's like you basically push a button for which of the endings you want. Hi! See, Walking Dead people just need boingo knees. Okay, or maybe not. What am I getting caught on?
He was chewing on your cat.
I think that's what it is. Because, I mean, the animation is this... They just look like they're smacking you around, but I think they're actually gnawing on your butt or something. It's like they slow you down and you can't move.
Just want to eat.
Am I almost to where I... Oh, I'm getting a transmission. Or is this a save point? Never mind, that was a save point. So basically, we've already decided to kill people previously, so it doesn't really matter if we kill these people. The argument, however, is like, these people aren't in their right minds.
Right.
So killing them does feel a little bit unfair, because it's not their fault that this is happening to them. I'm about to get to the same point I did before.
Same time, you could think.
You could think. The same time you could.
At the same time, you could think.
I could do that.
You're really, in some case, putting them out of their misery because we don't know if this is reversible.
Well, we don't. I mean, I do, as someone who's played this before. Okay. Well, that was easier that time. Where's the boss? This is the point where... Is it on the map and I just don't see it? No. So what about that? They're gonna claim that I'm killing my boss, but I never heard my boss. Do I have to wander around more until because there's something like they're trapped in some room and I gotta get them out and whatnot. Apparently I have to find that message first. So they're gonna get mad at me for a thing I never even found, but it's not my fault. Yeah, see? Those weren't objectives that the game told me about, so it's kind of rude to tell me I'm failing at them now. Anyway.
There's things you never knew you were supposed to do. Yeah, now we're telling you.
That's a metaphor for life.
Certainly marriage.
Wow. Something's up with my sinuses. Sorry.
Take control.
Take control of your sinuses.
sinuses.
I wish. There's a way to do that.
It's a lovely, lovely wife.
Sometimes I just want to take a hose and stick it up my nose and just see what comes out.
What?
Because they got that weird
Like you
thing,
saying
the
would come on
sinus
the other
circulation. Yeah, because
Yeah,
it's
it's
like
the
if you do-
neti pod deal.
It makes sense to me, but I'm also like, it seems uncomfortable.
Yeah, but doesn't your what is with the weird death worms going on?
Death worms, I think this is some piece of... I don't know, actually, what that's turned into me. It looks like it's just a seatbelt in the middle of nowhere. It's,
It's a cargo.
I guess some
buckle, I
kind of
suppose.
cargo straps. Oh, they flow even when the elevator's not moving.
That's what I'm saying. There's some sort of creepy death worm.
Is this supposed to be like a vent, maybe, I guess?
The worm is for death.
I don't care.
I don't care.
Anyways, so the point is, we're not giving the game its due.
He's trying to defend that it's a way better game.
It is, because even as I've edited it, I'm like, I just feel like it's lost some of its, I don't know, poignancy, I guess. Or something, I don't know, I'm talking for no reason, really. But anyways, this is the final boss, and it's kind of sucky. And...
It's very sucky, especially with that weird whatever's going on in the middle of the room.
the weird alien pods.
Weird alien upside down cake with the
That's
with the
awful.
chick on top of it.
This is stupid. Alright, so we got rotating turrets, and we got robots that perform patrols, and then we gotta kill the big lady.
And then the white lady on the table just gets left alone.
Oh no, yeah, we gotta kill them too. Because again, apparently killing them is not a morally inferior decision. Oh, okay. Wait!
We didn't.
Wait, here's the question. Is it gonna save for you now that I've reached this room? Because it seems like it should have. Like, they're not gonna make you go back again, are they? I hope.
Do not know, Mr. Krabs.
They best not.
Said that like you had somebody's personal number on file or something. They best not. I'd call Steve right now from... What is Deus Ex made by?
Square Enix, and this was made 10 years ago or so, so I guess I'd have to get time travel involved. Square Enix taken a bit of a dive in recent years, it seems. They made that one game that just came out a little while back. I don't know nothing about it except that everyone says it's terrible. No, they did it again! Surely there's a cutscene involved when we enter the boss room. This doesn't make sense, because even when you died, I started after this. That's a really weird thing that they're doing.
You know, looking over that edge makes a man think.
You're not on the mic anymore. You're gonna have to sit in properly.
Sorry. Did you catch that?
Well, maybe. I don't know anymore.
Did you hear me?
So we already had our talk with him. No, you're just doing the knee thing.
Did you hear me, Hugh?
This whole... He looks awfully despondent. Wow.
You're so despondent.
Well, I guess he's probably resigned himself to die here.
Well, that's why I was over there looking at the cliff. No, Hugh! Don't do it! Of a whole life of...
Why was Shaggy involved in this?
Shaggy? There's nothing shaggy about that.
That was a little... Don't do it, you!
Like zoinks, you! You still gotta go and put on a smoking jacket.
What?
Hefner. I was...
Is that okay? That's a... Sure. Could have gone with Jackman, or...
that's true, but...
I'm heading back to the hangar to see if
Guess that's it.
Well, Jackman is its own
Glimmers, but there's too much interference.
reward.
It's
You're
its own reward.
Just mentioning the man's name is...
Anyway. You had something insightful to say?
Nope.
Nope, never again. Let me look at this. The problem is, I wrote these down so freaking long ago. I don't want to dig through. I mean, look at all the notes I made for this. I was going to cream you with this discussion.
Okay.
And now I still can, because you probably remember it even less, because you didn't make notes. That didn't happen last time. Where did that come
You're talking about the discussion in which we are discussing how to rate things. You're about to be sadly and sorely mistaken.
Well, have you been thinking about it?
I have done more than thought about
Because
it.
I've done a lot of thinking too. But it's also
I'm interested to know how you're going to cream me, because I am fascinated to understand how you're going to do that.
Oh, because I've been ruminating. I'll start with my I don't know, what do you? What's
your thesis?
No, I'm going to start by giving credit. There's a word I was going to say. I was going to be benevolent.
So
there
is
you go.
all of this?
No, these are all my arguments. But I'll start by
They're
giving
all
you some...
the same about this
No,
force.
not just this chunk is all about
just this chunk.
Yes, I said I made a lot of notes. So I'll start by giving you some credit, because as I thought, well, first we're going to have to reiterate, because it was so freaking long ago, that you have this bizarre opinion
The lockdown's
that the middle point
the hangar to see
is not the middle
are open. Have you been able?
when you rate a
I
thing.
don't have a bizarre... What is that supposed to mean?
Well, how about you explain your point? Because
No.
the whole contention was, for me, an average film is a 2.5, because that is halfway between 0 and 5. And you take issue with that
I do
because
take issue
0
with it.
doesn't count to you. Therefore, 2.5 technically is not the midway, because you can't rate a film a 0 without just not rating it. At least that seemed to be your contention. Is that a fair summation? Don't chew
In
me,
order
Heidi.
to not prematurely shoot my load, I'm gonna say yes.
Okay. I don't know why that had to get involved.
I'm saying
But-
I have an argument that I'm gonna make, and I'm not
Well,
gonna
okay.
go giving you hints about
Well,
it
here's
early.
the thing that I recognized as I was thinking about it. I was like, okay, I can sort of get there, because if you think of it analogous to like a letter grading system, like A through F, that's 5, or no, that's... Yes, 5.
Now he's just, to be fair, folks, this is gonna really, the game's really about to suffer from this discussion.
Well, it is. Not that it wasn't going to do that anyways.
But I mean, it's gonna be real
But-
obvious.
So I can understand that if you're thinking of stars analogous to like, oh, this is an A movie, this is a B movie, and that. Sure, I grant that, but there's a reason we don't. Well, because I can understand that if you were to think of it analogous. Like, okay, a 5-star film is equal to an A, and a 4-star is a B, and a 1-star is an F. I get that, but there's a reason we don't use letter grading systems, or at least there's a reason I don't. I would just use a letter grading system if I wanted to do that. Because I understand in that aspect... I just don't... Because to me... I don't view them as assignments, so I don't think it's to grade them based as if there was like A through F. I'm not viewing it as like, oh, this was a failure of a film. I mean, I don't think of them that way. But my point in saying is I can understand in that aspect, if you consider that a C is an average grade, a C in this analogy would be a 3-star. Sure, I grant you that. But my point is we're using a star system, not a letter grading system. So I won't be using that paradigm because I don't think it matches as much as I think you could make that analogy and that at least makes some sense, because your previous way of explaining why you thought 3 was the midpoint despite the fact that it mathematically isn't, I was like, it just didn't make sense. Now it at least makes some sense. I just think I just disagree with the premise. Now I've forgotten where I'm going, and you were right about the game suffering. Get out of my way. Okay, that wasn't that bad. You gonna give me what's your?
I'd like to hear your slew of.
Well, I have a
reasons
slew,
here.
but you're being so cryptic as to not even. This was not meant to be like I'm gonna give all my points and then you give all yours. I wasn't meaning a strict debate. I was thinking more of a discussion.
Okay.
You're rejecting that, apparently. My point is, you said the phrase, and again, this sort of makes sense, but I don't think this way. My point, I guess, that I'm trying to give credit is that I can sort of understand, at least I think, because now you're being weird about what your opinion is, but I think I can understand why you think this way. I just don't think that way. Whereas previously, I didn't even understand what you were getting at. So the way you described it is, if you take 3 as the midpoint, you could go up 2 stars and down 2 stars, and it's like a travel based. So I wrote it down as it's a sort of bingo card analogy where it's like, okay, the center is free. Like every film starts with the center and then you travel based on that. And I sort of get there, except for the fact that if you include decimal points, then technically you can go half a star, which would be 2.5 stars less than 3. And only, but you can only go up 2 stars to 5. So just pointing that out. Now I'm getting eaten by zombie men.
Say that last part again.
I won't, because I was talking nonsense while getting eaten by zombie men. I'll formulate it better and then I'll say it again.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can say it however
This
you
is-
like.
because
I
these
just
are
want to
so-
make
okay.
sure I understand. Like the bingo card I got, and then you talked about the weird decimal point.
Well,
nonsense.
because since Letterboxd is what this all comes down to, because
no.
this all started because we were trying to rate.
It may start with Letterbox, but it certainly doesn't end there. You can't be like, Letterbox is the only thing that matters.
No, what I'm saying, because they allow the decimal system, that's why I use 2.5 as the midpoint, because it's an option. If it's
still
not an
doesn't-
option, like,
It still doesn't... Okay.
well, but I'm saying that's just because my point was a 2.5 star, because that's an option on this rating platform that I use. Therefore, I use it. Now, you could just say, well, I don't. But the fact of the matter is, you could think of it,
Staring into the void really makes a man think.
you could view it in the same way as it's a 10-star system, just in half. And you seem to think that
I certainly don't... I don't know that changes anything.
well, because then essentially a halfway between 10 is 5 stars. Thus, if you cut it in half, out of 5 stars, 2.5 is the midpoint. But again, that requires decimal points, whereas if you do it out of 10, it doesn't require decimal point. And you even still made the argument that, like, no, I still wouldn't
disagree.
Yes, well, see, that's where I think you're going to have to argue that,
I
because
certainly will.
because
and
you
I'm
tried
very
to claim
well
that like
prepared for it.
5.5 was your midpoint on a 10-star system, and I was like, that makes no mathematical sense.
But
That-
too much interference.
It's not what I said.
You did. So if
5.5
you're going to
is-
change your point, then I hope you do, because that made no sense.
No, 5.5 certainly isn't.
Princess.
Mine.
So I guess since you're being weird about not giving me an inch on what your opinions are, I'll have to give all of mine at once.
I'm not trying to not give an inch.
You're not giving
I
an
just
inch.
think, well, you are laying out what
Here's my
what
point.
you understand as my current argument, which helps me understand.
But I'm trying. But you're
where
not letting me
there
know
have
if I'm
been
correct.
gaps. Okay, so
I'm
You're
attempting to do
correct
that so that
in-
we're on the same page.
you're
If you don't
correct
tell me,
in saying that I've used 3 as my midpoint. That is correct.
well, okay. That much was established pretty obviously last time.
So I'm just saying that is a correct. That is the crux and
The question is why.
okay.
Why
and
do we differ?
That much I will definitely be able to explain.
Just run! Just
Ah!
run! Don't chew.
He doesn't. He wants to chew on my neck meat.
Your
Ah!
neck meat? Why would
They
that
don't want me to run.
be? Why would that be the way to say it?
He was.
Neck meat?
He was.
I don't know. That's just why. How is that any different than just your neck?
I'm just saying he had his chompers in my.
He's not interested in the esophagus. He wants the meat.
He wants the tendon on the side.
Okay.
I don't disagree with the analogy of the grading system being similar. I think that is true, and I don't take issue with that, and you clearly do.
Well, because to me, just use a letter system if that's how it's going to be. A star system is different than the letter system.
It's not.
Here's what I'll point out,
very
because
simple.
this is what really got me going on this.
Okay.
Because as I was...
Tell me what really sent you.
Where's my pictures? Because I made this image because
wow.
it perfectly demonstrates.
That makes sense if that's it.
Here's my point.
I'm just playing.
I might flash this up on screen for the
Don't flash anybody, please.
for the sake of the, because this will help to demonstrate my point, and I'm gonna have, in order to demonstrate to them as well. But this is when I rate something as an average film, this is what 2.5 stars look like.
Right.
And you'll notice this is what I think is crucial. There is an equal number of filled stars as not filled stars. Now this, of course, does lead me to a realization that I made that my system is based entirely on a percentage.
Mm-hmm.
It is not just an abstract 3 stars. It's 3 out of 5. And fractionally speaking, 3 out of 5 is not 50%, which is the middle point grade. Because we could agree, or are we not agreed, that if you were to rate a film out of 100, 50 would be the middle point. Now, we don't grade them out of 100 because that's almost too much nuance.
50 is a half of 100. I will say that, yes.
But, okay, so your objection seems to be that an average film is not half of a good film. Well, no, not half of a perfect film. Because a good film is,
No, that's not my objection.
Well, then, now you're just making no sense. I think you're making this up as you go along.
Nope. And I have a very well-developed argument.
Then since you're being cagey about it, I'll just give all my points and you'll give all yours. So basically, to me...
Now, okay.
No, shut up. You
You've had your time.
Well, a minute ago, I couldn't shut you up. My point, the reason why I think this way is because I would imagine, and I will demonstrate that I did in fact do this, if you were to take all of the ratings of a film, theoretically, I mean, if you could truly objectively say, which of course you can't, because subjective value is introduced, but let's say objectively speaking...
That's a fairly key...
Well, I agree, but let's say then better yet, I'll say it this way, so it's not so much a matter of...
To the hangar to see if the doors are open. Have you been able to raise it?
If your sense of a good film
Much interference.
was critically developed,
I think you're...
then presumably, if you were to take all the films you've rated
Francis,
and plot them,
you regret...
you should theoretically end up with a bell curve, where most films are in the middle, they're kind of average, few films are truly terrible, and few films are truly great.
True.
Which would therefore mean 0 to 5, if you were, that was the point of your bell curve, the midpoint of the bell curve would be at 2.5, mathematically speaking.
That is where I'm going to disagree with you.
Well, no, but see, that's where I don't think you can disagree, because mathematically speaking, that is how a bell curve works.
That's how a bell curve works, yes.
Well, so then you're
There's a different
you're
mathematical
dismissing the
principle
concept
that's
of the
not-
bell curve then.
I'm not dismissing the...
Stop
I'm-
chewing me haunches! Run, you fool!
Stop chewing me haunches.
Well, seriously, don't chew me in the hidey. So that's, but this is my point.
This is the crux
this
of
is
the problem,
clearly,
is that there is two...
So do you reject the bell curve concept? You would say that.
No.
Okay, but now you have to.
No.
Because you're saying, I agree with the bell curve concept, but the midpoint's not 2.5. It's like, well, no, definitionally speaking,
No.
a bell curve would be, the median of a bell curve is halfway between its two extremes. The two extremes being 0 and 5. Now, of course, you're saying that, does this all stem from the fact that you're excluding 0 from every single calculation? It seems like it must.
It is... That is the... I do not want to boil my argument down to that, but that is certainly a pretty significant difference in you and I's...
But see, that you have
You
to
are
do that
using
on a
it
bell
as
curve. You can't. A bell curve can't start at 1, because it may as well start at 0 at that point.
Agree, but my
To me, the percentage-based system I think was my most compelling, because when I see that visually, that to me
I don't
says
disagree
equal
with you.
good, equal bad.
That's true. That part is true. Yes, that
And thus, that is the
I
perfect
will
average
grant
film.
you
Is it
that.
has just as many positives as it has
Average,
negatives.
I disagree, but I will grant you that.
Well, see, that's why would you disagree with that language? Because that is what it means.
No,
It has
doesn't.
equal positives and equal negatives, thus it ends up perfectly average. If it was slightly more positive than negative,
I am going to put my argument on the tip of a knife point.
well, let me. At
But
least,
I recognize that it is, and I'm going to argue it nonetheless because of the fact that it is, to me, about precision.
I would argue that I am being more precise.
No. At least in the,
Well, here's
at least the way that I think about it.
here's then. I feel like you're going to have to concede that I'm being more concise because
Concise,
mathematically, precise. Because mathematically speaking, I am giving myself more nuance.
No.
Because you're excluding decimals. You're excluding.
I'm not excluding this.
Well, yes, because you're essentially saying that between 1
That's
and
the
5.
part I want you to unpack. No.
Because you're excluding the
You can
concept that
use
you could go
decimals.
less than 1.
No, I'm not.
You kind of are.
No.
Because 3, if you say 3 is the midpoint because you could go 2 stars up, that's 5. 2 stars down, that's 1. That negates the possibility of a film that's below 1. A half star, for
No,
example.
it doesn't.
It has to, because then 3 is no longer equal travel. So does the equal travel? That's what you mentioned last time.
Equal travel.
Well, so that
important.
means that a half star film is 2.5 stars less than 3 stars. Whereas 5 stars is 2
half-star
stars
film
more.
is 1.5 down from 3.
No, that would be
Yes.
1.5.
No.
1.5 plus 1.5 is 3.
No, what I'm saying is 3. You move back a full star.
Is 2.
That's 2.
You move back a half
Back
star.
a half
That's 1.5
that's
stars.
a half star.
No, 1.5.
No.
Okay, now you're just mathematically incorrect.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
1
No.
is a star
no.
here.
Forget
No,
forget
look,
your
1
weird
is a star here.
visualization.
No.
Let's go back to elementary
No,
school.
I'm
3
gonna
minus
use my,
1.5
No, I'm
is
gonna use
1.5.
my visuals. 1, 2, 3. If I go back a full star, I'm at
2.
2.
Go
I go
back-
back a half. Now I'm at a half a star.
No, you're at 1.5.
No, I'm not.
Okay, I feel like I need to get some pennies out or something because you're missing elementary school.
You're very funny.
Okay, you have a 2-star film. If you take half star off of that,
Now
that's
I have
1.5.
You're right.
Yes. That's
I've already
1.5
taken a
more.
full star away. Okay.
3 minus 1 is 2. Minus a half is 1.5. That is how math works. So if you want to work on some system that's not math, then I will let you do that.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is you argued that if it was a half a star, that I have then 1 extra half and another
No, you
whole
do. Well,
to
no,
get to 3.
But here's the thing. I'll admit that I have. If you're basing your system off of like a travel from a neutral mid,
Correct, because that is the
I
issue.
admit that I also-
you're using surface area to, again, percentage is a good
no,
representation.
it's not. Well, yes, it's not
because
the surface area.
No, it is. Imagine it being a square, and you're filling it to that particular level. So yes, you're correct. 2.5 would be the
Half of
of where 1 is filled and 1 is not. That part I agree with, and I don't disagree with you because that's true on a mathematical level. That 50% would be okay. You have 50 up from 100 or whatever, but then you have 100 you haven't 50 you haven't used. So it's 50 and 50 on both sides. I agree with that 1,000%. That's not an issue for me.
But
problem-
50% of 5 is 2.5. Mathematically,
No.
yes. A
50%,
fraction. If you write it as a fraction,
yes,
2.5 out of 5
yes,
is
50%.
3
of
out of
5
5
2.5.
is 60%.
Yes. What?
3 out of 5 is 0.6. That's 60%, mathematically speaking.
Okay.
So that means that to you, an average film is 60% of a film.
No, because I'm not using the.
You're not using math, it would seem.
That's not the truth. I'm using a different sense of math.
Well,
Now,
no, there's only one sense of math.
No, there's not.
We're not even going to play the game. We're going to sort this out because I think you need some.
No, I
Math
don't.
help.
The by definition, the midpoint of between 1 and 5 is a 3. Look it up. Because you have
If you're-
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3 is the midpoint.
Well, no.
Yes.
If you take
That is a
only the
mathematical
integers.
fact.
No, only if you're using integers alone.
No.
Yes.
You can break it up into halves and still have the same amount on one side and the other.
Okay, but that is you're only going from 1 to 5. You're excluding
Correct.
anything below 1.
Because you can't
You
go
can have a
below that.
half-star film, in my opinion.
What I'm saying is if you have a half, then I have another half and a whole. That's, okay, now I have 2. And then I move it another half. So that's now...
I'm gonna get this out because
Yeah, that's great.
this literally, like, we're not... Screw the game this week. This is so... Because I will literally... I'm going to show you, at least based on your previous argument. You might have some other non-mathematical argument.
No, it's not a non-mathematical argument. Midpoint, by definition, between 1 and 5 is 3.
Yes.
That is by definition
Well, yes,
what the midpoint is.
But why do you start at 1 when there is an option for less? You're just neglecting the option for less.
even if there is an option
I'm
for
gonna
less,
pick a
3
random
is
film.
still then...
No,
within
3 no longer is the
within
midpoint.
3 then is contained the midpoint.
Only if you round up.
No,
Okay. I'm going to pick some
you would
random
have
film.
to parse 3 out
Well, no, you'd
into
have to...
2 different sections, but yes.
Let's just see what's new this week.
So 2.5. Okay, let me say it this way. I'm gonna slightly
There you go,
reveal
Little
my
Mermaid.
argument.
So here's... Okay, we're going to
I'm
do
going to
this visually. I'm going to rate this. Look at this. You have a 3-star film. You take off a star. It's now a 2-star film. You take off half a star. It's a 1.5-star film.
Yeah, I agree.
That is
So,
not what you said
look.
5 minutes ago.
Look, half a star,
That's a... Well, okay, you're going to have a hard time.
half a
This is
star.
a half-star... is there an easier way? I think I can make that bigger. So I don't have
We're
to-
about to rate the Little Mermaid 5 stars by accident.
There we go. So look at this. Here's your half star.
Half star.
Then what?
Okay, so that means
Can't see that.
that if you
Just tell
are
me what to
wanting,
do.
if you're wanting the
Which means in order to get to 3,
I have-
what do I have to do? I have to go 1 half, 1
You
whole.
have to go- and then
2
another
holes.
half. No.
That's 2.5.
No, you have to go.
That's not
that-
3 anymore. That's 2.5.
No, but again, within 3 is the midpoint.
But see,
2.5
But
is
you-
not the midpoint.
you are rounding up.
No, I'm
to
not.
3.
2.5 is not the midpoint. Again, this is where I say I'm parsing out. I'm
If you were
splitting
to
hairs.
show anyone how many stars is this,
It's in
they would say
between-
it's 2.5.
It's in between both 2.5s.
No, it's in
Yes,
between
it is.
2, which is this.
Listen, look.
This is 2.
Okay,
This
I'm
is
going to
3.
make this argument with the piano. Between the C and the D.
I'm now gonna have to like screen
No.
capture everything we're doing because
Between the C, you're gonna see my argument, and
if
you're
you're
gonna
gonna
see
use
how
half
I'm
steps
parsing-
on a piano, that's
No.
so whack.
No, it's not.
'Kay.
If I use between the C and the D,
Let's get
what
a-
is the midpoint? It's the C sharp or the D flat, which is in between. But if I
But
do
those,
that,
but no one would say
but
a
if
C
I do
sharp
that-
is
no one would say what.
okay. I think you're using to use musical notation isn't the same.
It's
though.
not. But what
Well, I
I'm
agree. It's not math though.
No, it is.
Well, okay.
It's
There
math
is
in a
math
different-
in musical
Agreed,
connotation,
so here's
but it
the
isn't
issue.
arithmetic.
It. What I'm
Here's my
saying
point.
is arithmetic. So I'm
Should
gonna.
we call anyone who's awake and ask them how many stars is this? Because I guarantee
It's
you,
2.5. I'm not saying it's not.
you're saying it's contained within this being the, third
midpoint
star.
is contained within, if you're using decimal integers, the midpoint is contained within the 3. Because
it is
it's
not the
between 2.5 and the other 2.5.
No, it is between 2.
No.
This is 2 stars. This is 3 stars.
Yes.
This, therefore, is half between 2 and 3. That's 2 stars, 3 stars. What is between 2 and 3?
But
2
you
and a
can't
half.
actually. Well, where's that dot located?
In the middle, between
No.
2 and 3.
Because you're saying 2.5 is the actual
2. Plus
representation
1
of
half.
half of midpoint. And I'm saying no, it's going to be a 2.5 and a 2.5 on the other side, which means the midpoint has to be somewhere between those 2.5s.
Okay, there are no... What do you mean 2, 2.5?
If I have 2.5 on this side of a scale and 2.5 on this side of the scale itself is the midpoint. Does that make sense? I can't have the 2.5 be representative of the
But see,
the
this is
midpoint.
where your weird bingo space analogy comes to me, because you're acting like the midpoint almost doesn't exist. It's merely the balance between the other two.
Yes,
I
that's what an
reject that.
average is.
No.
Yes, an average is, it is the median. That's what I'm using. It's mathematical
See,
median.
Here's my point, though, is that you're essentially saying, let's ignore this star. We ignore that
Yes,
star. We have
100%.
But see, that to me then says now that star is no longer an eligible rating.
No, it's not an eligible rating. It's a useful star to use for the
But see,
average.
yeah,
It's the
but see,
median.
that means that
It's the median tipping
that's completely
point.
cutting
That's what
off.
a scale is.
But that's cutting off one of your 5-star options, because that means if I think of
It
film-
allows you to go, okay, is it leaning more towards the 4-5, or
Yeah,
is
but
it
see, no, look
going
at this.
more towards the
is this more negative than positive?
more positive?
Exactly. Therefore, this
I
would be
totally
a better
disagree
than
with you.
average film.
I totally agree with you, but the point
This
is
would be
that's
more negative
only-
than positive.
That's only in the fact that you're using percentage and surface area.
No, it's not surface area, it's percentage.
If I use, so take all this off, I have 5 stars
What
in
you're
front of
doing
you.
is you're trying
I'm
to...
using the 3rd star as my midpoint. That means I have 2 less here or 2 more
But see,
here.
that's absurd to
No,
me.
it's not. It's a
you're-
midpoint.
No, because you're acting like it's some kind of bizarre fulcrum.
It
This
is.
No, because this is not a physical machine. This is a
It
mathematical
doesn't
value.
matter. On a geometric level, I'm correct.
Well, but see, geometrically speaking, that's not what I'm speaking. I'm speaking
I'm
abstract
talking about
mathematics.
No, I'm talking about the fact that even if you're talking about, here's where the other part of here's where I'm about to just go smack, and this is the end of my argument, is that when you are talking about 2.5 being the representative
here's
of the
what-
actual midpoint. No, hear me out.
No, because here's the thing.
Look,
Look at this. Look
there
at this.
is-
Where's your fulcrum? It's at the peak of this star.
It's in between the 2.5s. You know what I'm saying?
No, because the
Here's
argument,
the thing.
even if I was to try to grasp this bizarre geometric concept, which is not at all what I'm using, mathematics, geometry, and math are distinct studies for a
No, they're
reason.
not.
Yes, mathematics is required in geometry. Geometry is not necessary in math. Math is necessary in geometry.
Geometry
You need math
is
to be able to draw.
made up of math.
Yes, math is not made up of geometry. All
Sure.
geometry involves math. Not all math involves geometry.
Sure.
So my point is, even though there is a geometric concept where this would be a coterminal point, both 2.5s would share this point.
Yes.
So
but
the argument
point
is that
itself is the midpoint.
Yes, but it can be shared by both. Therefore, you don't have to side
It's
with
the
one or the other.
Exactly. That would be the fulcrum point.
Thus,
But there's no way of
2.5.
representing that on that, because what you are doing right now is saying 2.5 is the actual midpoint. I'm saying that
It
doesn't
can
work
be.
for me.
It can be.
No.
Because you do cut. My point is, it doesn't. There is such a thing as both and. It can be part of one side and part of the other. It's a coterminal axis. Both sides equally share this point.
I agree, but the point itself is the shared axis.
But why is that irrelevant? Why is that a problem?
It's not. It's
that's
not irrelevant. There's no way of representing it on a 5-star system.
This
Here's the
is
thing.
representing it on a 5-star
No.
system. Look at it.
No, I am looking at it. What I'm telling you is
2.5
so if you're
positive,
filling
2.5
out
negative.
bubbles in a test.
You can fill half a bubble.
No, if you're filling out bubbles within a test, you have so what's your especially in a personality test. Okay, so would you say somewhat agree, fully agree, neutral, or somewhat disagree, or disagree fully? Neutral is the fulcrum point. You have to actually fully fill in the center.
But see, this is
star.
this is what we get
You cannot.
to. You can't half fill in a bubble. But this
You
is my
can't
point.
also fill in 2.5. That
But
doesn't
this
work.
is my point: is that you are basing all of your quote unquote math off of purely integers. You are not allowing decimals.
No, I am allowing
No,
decimals.
you're not, because you're saying on a test, you realize these tests aren't using math; they're using phrases. That's why they phrase
I'm not-
agree, strongly agree,
But my point
disagree,
is,
strongly
on
disagree.
a 5-star system, which is what that is, it's 5 bubbles that you have to fill in one or the other, whatever else.
Yeah,
it is
but-
a fulcrum point.
But you are suggesting, therefore, that you have to fill them in completely, which means they have to be integers.
Or you separate them out. I'm good with them being
Which,
decimal
well,
pointed.
you
Now,
don't seem to be good with
I'm
them
about
being
to-
decimal points,
Are you
because
ready to get-
I'm half filling this
Are you
bubble, and
ready
you
for
seem
me
to be
give
telling
me-
me
No,
that
what
I
I'm
have to
telling
fully
you,
fill the bubble.
What I'm telling you is that you don't have to fully fill the bubble. What I'm telling you is your midpoint then is somewhere in between those two, and there's no way of
Well,
representing it.
I agree. My midpoint is between 2
No.
and
your-
3.
No, your midpoint is between 2.5 and 2.5 on the other side.
No, but see, that's where... Okay, but this is what's weird, is when I say fraction, I mean of 5. Because here's my point. This, no matter what selection I choose, the 5 is always there.
Correct.
Whether or not it's fully shaded or completely not shaded, the 5 is always there. So 2.5, it's not between 2.5 and 2.5. It's between 2 stars.
It is 2.5 and 2.5.
No, 2 stars, 3 stars, 2.5 stars.
See,
I am
you're
basing it off of
using
the
it
fact that this is an unrated film. 0,
Agreed.
I haven't filled in anything. But the 5
Agreed.
stars are still there as my
But see,
options to fill in.
The only way I can
So to
represent
me,
this
you're
is
suggesting-
not doing it on this digital
Yes, but
is
here's
going
my-
to demand that I'm doing it on a percentage level like you are, and I'm not.
Well, but see, again, you're basing it entirely off of
I'm not.
integers.
No, look,
No, 'cause here's what you wanna
give me
do.
give
I'll
me
show you
give
what-
me an actual piece of paper and I'll show you because
No,
here's where
what
the
I'm
other
gonna
part.
get you.
Here's
I'm
where
gonna
the
get
other
you
part of my
5
argument comes
individual
in.
objects.
No, here's
Because
where
I-
the other part of my argument comes in.
I'm gonna have
Is
coins.
Jamie Heineman was talking about at one point on his podcast.
Here we go. I got paper clips. Or these things.
No, sorry, Adam Savage on his podcast was talking about.
Going back to elementary school, everybody.
No, we're not.
Nobody thought we were going to do this time. So here we go. This is what you're suggesting.
Okay,
Because
are
you're
you gonna
saying
actually let me finish my argument? Because I
No.
think that you just don't want to actually hear
no,
it.
because here's the thing that's what you are suggesting to me, and what it sound. The problem I'm having is what you are saying makes sense, except for the fact that you were trying to have it both ways.
No, I'm not.
Because here's my point. If you were to say it
About
like
to tell you how it works both ways, and you're not one to hear it.
no, you have claimed to drop your bomb every time. Here's my point.
Because I haven't actually gotten to say it.
No,
I
because
was about to
you've
say
said it several times. But here's
No,
my
I
point.
haven't.
In this instance, we have 3, and there are these weird paperclippy things. But
This
you
is
know,
the middle.
Well,
Would you
I
agree?
agree. This is the middle because it's indivisible. This is one
Correct.
whole object that I can't cut in half. You just said I don't want to use the digital system because it allows you to cut them in half.
My point is I don't want to use the digital system because what it requires me to do
Is to cut them in half.
is to actually use percentages, and at that point I would
Which is
have
what my
to go
whole
like this.
But this is what I said. My whole argument is predicated off of mathematical percent.
And I said,
to me, when I say-
said mine is on math, but it's not on percentage.
But see,
It's
that,
still
you can't-
math.
That is a completely farcical sentence.
No, it's not.
A percentage is a mathematical concept.
So is integers.
Yes.
So,
But percentage, you can't say it's percentage. It's not. It's what did you? Okay, I'd like you to repeat what you just said because
What I said
perhaps what
was-
you meant was not what you said because
What-
what you said was not possible.
no, what I
You
said,
said
was,
it's percentage, but it's not math, or the
I
other.
said mine is also based on a mathematical principle. It's just not percentages.
Okay, well, sure, I'll grant you that, but I've said from the beginning mine is based on.
Okay, so
percentages.
therein lies the key to our
and yours is
disagreement.
all integers.
It's not purely integers because what I'm trying to say
well, it
to
is
you,
because you're suggesting that there is
decimals is not the same thing as percentages either.
no. Well,
It's not.
okay, they're not in and of themselves, but this is my point: is a rating is always out of something.
I'm still going to
'Cause
say
I could say-
geometrically is really what I'm landing on because
Well,
this
but you're
is where-
imagining like
this is
some
what I'm-
bizarre scale. Like
I
it has
am,
to be
yes.
a physical thing.
Because here's
like
the
this
thing.
rating has to be able to be put on a scale and be balanced.
That's-
and I'm like,
it's a
that is-
balance
That is
issue.
such a weird way of thinking
No,
about
it's
it.
not.
It
So
is.
Adam Savage had that one particular episode in his podcast, and you were the one that I think either showed this to me or I showed it to you, and it was like a very fascinating thing, in which he had that die set, and he was trying to actually like get to such a precise level of measurement or something of that nature, where he literally recognized that there's only so much we can continue to actually finitely measure, because one of the sets that he has that's literally
But see-
meant for that microscopic measurements literally changes its measurements based on the cold or the heat.
But this is precisely my
And-
point: is you're attempting to represent the real world mathematically, but
Right.
films, my rating of a film is not a real thing. I'm not rating the weight of the film or the measurement. These things,
I am.
the film doesn't have a weight or a measurement. It's an abstract concept.
What I'm saying
It's a
is
story. You
this-
can't rate the physical properties of an
What I'm
abstract
saying is
concept.
visually, this makes perfect sense to me. The average is a balanced
I
film.
agree, but this is again all integers.
Yes,
you
but what
are
I'm saying
denying
is
the
even-
possibility
no,
of decimals.
I'm not. Even if you have decimals, again, I say, and this is where, again, Adam Savage's
But-
argument
but-
comes in.
but this is why this example
it would
is
be in
good.
between 2.5 and 2.5. Because then at that point, it would be balanced again.
But see,
You'd
again,
have 2.5
you're
on the
suggest-
lower negative and 2.5 on the positive.
But that's what I'm saying is weird, is that you're attempting to meet you're starting
from outside.
Yeah,
I'm either
but see, this is what's weird is that you're starting at 1 and 5 simultaneously and meeting somewhere
0
in the middle.
and 5, yes.
Don't start with that. You've been denying 0 this whole time.
I'm saying if you're wanting to use decimal points, we can still use 0.
No, but my point is, I start. This is, I guess, where it has to come from. Is that no rating means anything unless you describe the scale at the same time.
What does that mean?
1 inch doesn't mean anything unless you know what an inch is. And in the same way, 3 stars doesn't mean anything unless you know how. Because here's the thing. If you didn't know how many stars the person in question was using, let's say you went to a random website and they say this is a 3-star film. That doesn't tell you anything unless you know, are they using a 10-star system or a 5-star system? Because if it's a 10-star system, 3 stars is a very bad film.
Sure.
If it's a 5-star system, 3 stars is actually a pretty decent film. You have to know the scale. You have to know, I'm sure there's a proper term for it. It's like you have to know out of what.
Sure.
Like I could say, would you like a piece of pie? And I could hand you 3/4 of a pie. Technically speaking, that's 1 piece.
Sure.
If you cut it that way.
Sure.
But the point I'm saying is, I suppose I'm not saying this whenever I say it, but when I say a 3-star film, what I mean is a 3 out of 5-star film. And if you take that as a fraction, 3 out of 5 is above average.
That part I agree with you.
So when I say
because
this is
3
math,
out of 5 is above average, but a 2.5 out of 5 would be half.
Is 50.
Yes, it would be half.
So you think of it as
not
like
the
a
same
percentage
as-
on a grade. If you got 50% on a
Correct.
test,
And again,
you
if
got
you're
half the
looking at
questions
it-
right and half the questions wrong.
Correct.
50%, 2.5 out of 5.
Right. But then at
or
that
5
point,
out of 10,
but then at
or
that
50 out of
point-
100.
But the problem with that is that it wouldn't then land in the center.
Well, see, it wouldn't land in the center of this hypothetical scale you feel you have to construct. But I'm
It's not
saying
about
it's
a
an abstract
hypothetical
number.
scale.
Let it be an abstract number.
Integers or numbers are on a linear.
But see, this is my point:
an
is
infinitely linear line.
If you were to
it's
simply
either
accept,
negative or positive, or it's
well, at that point, 0 becomes the midpoint if you're going to include negative
Correct.
numbers.
that's
But we're
fine.
not talking about that.
But I'm saying then you want to decimal it out. Even 0 can be broken up into smaller and smaller and smaller
No, it
bits.
can't.
Well, imaginary numbers. But the point
That's
is,
not what imaginary numbers
but
refer
the
to.
point is,
0 is always 0. It can't be anything else.
but if,
Zero
if you're
point
gonna
zero
start-
zero
if
zero
you're
zero
gonna
one
start
is no longer
splitting
0.
numbers, then
You can't split any numbers. This is my
0
point.
does become your infinite midpoint. Yes, that is 100%.
But here's
true,
but this is what throws me off is
that's essentially what I'm doing.
you're
I'm
not
using
content.
0.
Well, here's the thing. If you would simply acknowledge that you are using integers and denying the possibility of decimals,
I'm not.
well, you claim
Use
to
0
not.
as the midpoint. I have
You
a half
claim
a
to
star
not be.
on the positive. That means that it would be the 3.5 stars. Or you use the half a star on the negative. That would be a 1.5 stars.
No, it would be negative 1/2 and 1/2.
No, I'm saying if you're using this as 0.
See, again, this is why I think this is valuable is because these can't be subdivided. Thus, these are integers.
No, what I'm
And
saying.
you keep redounding to these as if these just explain
No,
your point.
that-
And they do,
They do.
provided
No.
you only use integers.
No. If this is 0, I can go up half.
Okay, but okay.
And then I can go down
But
half.
guess what? You're now saying this one object is equal to half of some other object. Thus, you
No,
are
I'm
using.
not.
Yes.
You can split this object in half.
Well, yes, I could if we broke it. If we could
So
break
I'm
this in
saying
object in
I
half.
could literally draw a line on the half of this, and that would mean that this is the 0 if we want to use.
But here's
0
what
as
I
the
think is
midpoint.
also funny, though, is if I were to do that, if you were to say, all right, fine, in order to get the decimal, we're going to cut this one in half. And then we had pretend that we just had half of this, and I called someone not involved in this discussion, and I said, can you count these? They would say, well, this is 2.5. If you were to cut this in half,
Sure.
no one would say,
And then
well,
you
this
would
is
say
technically
2.5
3.
on this side.
Because again, you're
I'm not saying it's technically 3.
you're sort of making
I'm talking about midpoint.
well, no, you're sort of making the argument that in order to
Midpoint.
get a half, like of a physical object, if you want 2.5 things, you have to take 3 and cut half of them. Like you have to take 3 of them, take one of them and cut it in half.
Correct.
But again, that is only because you're starting from like a real world physical point. Like I have to
Correct.
take 3 objects and then I have to split one of them in half. But
If
why
I
not
split your
But why
body
not
in half-
use since these are abstract concepts? Why not use the abstract numbers?
Because I have always appreciated the mathematical evidence of geometry. Geometry was my absolute.
I like geometry
Love
too, but my
child in
point is that I
math.
think is odd is your stubborn refusal to acknowledge
It's not
that
an
you're-
integer-based thing.
it is an
It's
integer-based
not.
thing because you're starting
Because you can put it on the linear scale of numbers.
Because even okay, yes, but you only do that by saying that one object is equal. Okay, this could be half.
Half of 10
Is 5.
is 5, but the midpoint of 10 is not 5. It's in between the two 5s.
okay.
There, that's
no,
all
what
I'm
are-
saying.
You see, you're saying the midpoint of a thing that's say 10 inches long is 5 inches long.
It's in between the two.
But see,
notice
now
the two.
this is where you're getting into this weird Adam Savage, like, yes, technically speaking, if you took a stick that was 10 inches long and you cut it in half, unless you had, like, the most perfect of all perfect scales, you would never truly cut it in half because you can't perfectly get there. But I'm like, you're speaking in terms of metrology, which is literally the science of measuring things.
Sure.
And the reason
But
metrology...
that's what you're doing.
No, but here's the thing. The reason
you're-
metrology exists is because of the fact that the real world can't be perfectly broken up into numbers.
Which is why I was using this piano scale, if you'll let me return to it, because...
I won't let you return to
Yes,
that because of
it
the
will
fact
help
that not
you.
every number...
It will help you
because-
feel better.
No, it won't.
It will.
Because I
Because
understand your point that
Pythagoras-
C sharp and D flat are the same the same note.
But what I was saying...
But E sharp and F flat, am I doing that
there's
right?
no such thing, and I was about to make that
Exactly,
concept.
but that's my point.
There-
Is
but
C
there
and
is a-
D,
but-
C and D are already a half a step away from each other.
Right, but notice...
So the sharp and flat
but
means
notice
nothing.
E and F are right next to each other, and there is no sharp or flat in between those two, but the actual crevice in between the two keys
Again,
would be the midpoint.
See, this is where it's odd to me that you are, in every example, starting with a physical thing and getting numbers out of it.
Because that's how math works.
No, that's how metrology works. This is the difference.
That's what you're doing when you're
No.
rating a film.
No,
You're measuring
because a film
the
is a
weight of the film.
No, a film is an abstract thing. So I can understand your insistence. Like, if you took a 10-inch stick and you wanted to cut it perfectly in half, you couldn't possibly do that because there aren't measuring equipment precise enough to reach the precise midpoint. That is technically true. But the reason metrology exists is because numbers don't map perfectly to physical objects. But a film is not a physical object. A
don't
film is
disagree with
abstract as a number.
I don't disagree with
So
you.
why not use abstract numbers? I agree that there can be no such thing that is a perfect, exact 2.5 in the real world. But a film is an abstract thing.
It's not about a perfect exact 2.5.
Well,
The fact that
you bring up the Adam Savage thing is like, yes, if you're saying this is a 2.5 inch thing and this is a 2.5 inch thing,
It has to be balanced.
but only if it was physical. If you allow it to be perfectly abstract, then 2.5 is perfectly balanced.
It's not.
It
because
is.
there is a
It can't
point-
be in the real world, but mathematically speaking, it is perfectly balanced. It's
The
like
myth- the-
it's
the
like a
point on a
one-dimensional
line-
line. No, this is
point on
exactly
a
the point.
line-
There is no such thing. You can't represent a one-dimensional line. I agree with you. Every line you draw has some dimension, no matter how fine of a pencil you get.
Right.
But the only reason that's true is because numbers do not map perfectly to the physical world.
Right.
No matter how thin your pencil is, you will have a non-one-dimensional line.
But even though stars are digital, it is still to some degree a physical representation of what you're trying to do. And so therefore 2.5.
No, okay, but see, this is where I go, forget the star language. What I mean
No,
is...
that's the language we're using.
No, because this is why I think maybe what your weird issue is you're like stuck on the stars. I'm talking about the numbers. It could be 2.5 fish out of fish. I don't care how many things it is. It could be 2.5 squares out of 5 squares. To me, what matters is not the squares, because again, mathematically speaking, if you were to take 2.5 inches out of 5 inches, guess what happens? You end up with a there's a mathematical term for it, especially in engineering, because it matters. Because this is also how you do conversion rates between like inches and feet, is essentially 1 inch divided by 12 inches. You end up not only dividing 1 by 12, you divide inch by inch, and so the inches disappear, and you end up with a something number. I wish I could remember the name of it, but it's essentially a number that doesn't have a unit. Like, because every number in the real world, you're representing a thing. A inch, a
Right.
star, a full object. But if you
Or
divide,
half, or
because again, mathematically speaking, if you divide three stars out of 5 stars, you're not
It's
only
more than half. I don't disagree
and
with
not
that
only that, the
sentiment.
stars cancel out because there's a star on each side. This is a weird thing with units.
What does that mean? A star cancels out.
Well, I'm gonna have to. It's very simple, and yet it also
because
takes
3 out of 5 is more than half. I recognize that, but that doesn't.
I'm gonna have to. So this is how you would do a conversion, right? For if I want to say 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. Why this equals 12 inches over 12 inches. These cancel out, and you get feet per inch.
Right.
So units can be divided mathematically speaking.
Sure.
As in, so if I say, I'm not just saying 3 out of 5, I'm saying 3 stars out of 5 stars. What is my mathematical answer? 3 out of 5. The stars cancel out. So my point is,
Well,
I'm not
okay,
basing
but
it
that's
off of the
more-
physical object. It doesn't matter that it's a star. It could be any other shape. It could be any other concept. It doesn't matter because to me, the fraction means I could take this, 3 out of 5, I can apply it to anything. This is 3 out of 5 thumbs up.
Okay, but my
Like,
point.
this
but
doesn't
my
matter.
Point is, my point is,
You're insistent on the stars. I'm insistent on the numbers.
No, what I'm saying is, again, if you still have it on an actual linear line, because that is what you're doing.
No, you're not.
You are.
This is but this is what
because
I
you're
disagree with.
forced to stay within the 5-star system. So I either have a half.
But see, this is what's weird is that you're insisting that we take one whole object, which is a 5-star block, and carve it. I'm saying each star could be nothing. That I'm not taking one big thing and cutting it into pieces. I'm taking an abstract
the problem
number.
with that is that you can't use 0. You can't use 0, and
Well,
that's why I did
in
accept
the sense
that
you
restriction.
can't use 0 in that.
You can't rate a film a 0. I
well,
can't. I'm not allowed to.
Not without
At
not
that
rating
point, it's
it,
not
yes.
rated.
Sure.
Which is
This
actually better than
Well, but
what
see,
I'm
this
going to
is
give
where
it,
I
which
would-
is a half of a star or whatever.
But see, this is where I would say this is why my bell curve example matters. Because this is 0, this is 5. This means that technically speaking,
3 is
neither. No. Okay, but see, that's where you're just mathematically wrong.
No, I'm not.
Because my point is, technically speaking, in this example, there is no such thing as a 0-star film, and there's also no such thing as a 5-star film, technically, because this is the boundary. But this does mean that I could have like a 4.999 star
Sure,
film.
great. That's
and
fine
for
with
the
me.
sake of proper language, I'm going to call that a 5-star film. Because there's no reason
Sure.
I don't
And
need
that's
to
what
be
I'm
that
saying.
precise.
Okay.
So, yes, I agree that there is no such thing as a 0-star film, but there is such a thing as a 0.01 star film.
Okay, great.
As in
I'm
something
fine with
so
that,
bad
too.
it's almost not being worth being rated.
Okay.
But this is my point, is simply because the number itself may not be truly reachable, you can still use it to represent your point, because unless you want to
However-
say it's a 0.001.
However, 3 is still your exact midpoint. Your like precise midpoint.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is, because you will always have 1, 2
You're
as you're going
again,
it up.
you're now breaking up
3.
a 5-star chunk or a 5 whatever. The thing that that we do seem to be stuck with. Oh, did you just prove your point? Did you
No.
just prove my point? Why is it that you fit 2 numbers here?
Well, and
not
again,
one
I've
there?
accepted that is a restriction because I don't. 0 is
You're
not
starting
able
every
to be.
film at 1.
No, I'm
if
not.
you were to do what you
Because
just
if you just did a half a
if this
star
was
here-
1, okay, but now you've said 1.
So again, 1. I'm accepting and admitting.
Exactly.
I'm already.
So you're starting with 1. You're neglecting
I'm
0 in every
I'm
case.
saying 0 is the boundary, but I am
Well, then
then
what-
saying. So
Yeah,
that
but-
part I did.
Well, no. So
concede.
No, I think you've just sealed your demise with your little faux pas just then.
That's if you think so.
Because what you wanted to do was do this
4, and that would be then
2.
Correct.
Now you're left with these are all equally spaced.
correct.
What does this have to be for this to be equal? This has to be 1. It can't be
Okay,
half
so
a star.
I see what you're saying as far as integers. Okay, I got you.
Yes, which means you're simply saying that you don't divide things.
I don't have.
You make them
half a
all be
star
whole.
because there can't be more.
Exactly. You
'Cause
make
that-
them whole.
Yeah,
You
sure.
want whole numbers only. No integers.
Fine.
No decimals.
Well, but see, and I still submit. I
Now,
can
where would
have.
half a star be? Half a star would be here, which also means this is 2.5, this is 3.5, this is 4.5. But again, we're presuming that we're starting with 1.
But
And I'm not starting
what's
with 1.
interesting though is I can do.
How long is this is the most ridiculous.
It's not ridiculous.
Well, I mean, it is in that the fact that we haven't even touched the game, and I don't even know how long. No one's seeing these stupid doodles we're drawing.
What's
I'm gonna have to
interesting
take
though.
pictures of- again, you are.
What's interesting though is I can do half a star here.
Or a bubble, or whatever you want.
Yeah, and then again, if I am carving, like I don't have a problem with the fact that spatially is what I'm doing.
Yes,
That I don't. I
but
literally
think
don't have a problem with
What's
that.
odd to me is that you are also insisting that you're trying to have
It
it
is very
both
much a
ways.
physical thing. I don't disagree with you. Now, the integer thing does surprise me because to me, I do think 3 is still your mathematical midpoint because
Only if 1 is your mathematical beginning.
no, because you have half and you have half here that you can come in. That means that would be 4.5.
Again, this is my point: is you have this odd thing where you're trying to start on both sides
right,
simultaneously.
because that would then lead you to your midpoint.
Yeah, but I'm starting. I suppose.
Which is why I'm saying 2.5. If you divide these, so going back to these little things that we're using as our integers.
Here's what's weird to me, is that what you're doing is you're trying to say, okay, I start here and I move inwards, and I start here and I move inwards at the same time.
Right.
I suppose that's a way to do it, but what I'm doing is I'm starting from an unrated film, and I'm saying, how good is this out of 5? I'm gonna say it's this good, 3.5. I start from 0 and I go up. I don't start from 5 and work down. I don't know why that's part of your process.
My point is, it could have been a 5, but it was a star and a half less than what it could have been.
That's where I think we have a disagreement, is that you're starting from the ideal film is a 5 and I'm having to take demerits based off of how it doesn't match.
Because then
I
you
suppose-
sit in an average, which is the average film, which I would say is an average part of the bell curve. I don't disagree with that. This is where I'm getting thrown off because, again, this mathematically works.
Well, let's just map it onto here.
So how
These
is it
are
that
your
I'm able
bubbles.
to do a half?
You're not. That's my point.
Yeah, but
your system
but what I'm
neglects
saying,
halves.
no, because now you're saying that I can't use a half over here as well.
Well, no, your half.
You just cut that off.
Well, I suppose by strict definition, then I should have done it so that the end.
So then
point-
5 has to be, and 1 has to be included, where 0 is
Well,
the end
so
point,
sure,
and then past
This is,
5
I
has
guess,
to be
you'd
your
have to
end
make
point.
these kind of weird big bubbles.
Well, but what I'm saying is then again.
But guess how many bubbles you have?
No, my
4.
point. No, my point is
1,
then
2,
the
3,
way you'd
4.
actually have to graph this is 0 becomes one side of your midpoint, or I mean one side of your
Here's
bell
what I
curve,
think you might
and
be-
6 is the other side because then it would be 1, 2.
Yeah, but see, that's
3,
such a bizarre.
4,
you could say
5.
it's a 3 out of 6
And then at that
film.
point, it would be the bell curve would be there, the 3
Here's
would
the
be
thing.
there,
If
and
you
then
were to
you'd
say
actually be
you
able to
could do
use the
that,
5.
and here's what's weird is you could absolutely do this and say I would write this 3 out of 6. That's a valid system because again,
No.
all systems are arbitrary. You could say
Sure,
I
but
would
what
rate
I'm
it
saying
7
is at
out
that
of 12.
point, the midpoint would not be 3. It would be in between the 3 and the 3.
But see, this is your bizarre, when you say it's between the 3
This
and the
is-
3, that only works if you're saying each half, it's almost like you're rating 2 different things and then mashing them together at the end.
I'm not. What I'm using
It's
is an
between
actual
it's
midpoint
between
or
the
average.
3 good parts and the 3 bad parts.
What I'm saying is if you divide this in half,
Here's what I
my
think.
stroke of my pen is the midpoint.
But here's
it's
what
not
I think.
the
This is what I
actual
think you're
thing.
confused by. Is if I do this, if I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Are you gonna flip me off?
5 fingers. But guess what happens if you divide 5? If you say 5 minus 1, 4.
5 minus 1
So
is 4.
5
sure.
objects, yes, 5 fingers. But if you say 5 minus 1, you have 4 spaces between the fingers. You're basing your ratings off of the spaces between. I am including, yes, because you want 4 only.
No, I don't. Here's 3 right
No,
here.
This is.
I'm gonna flip you off.
Here's what my point is.
This is 3.
Look at
I have
this.
1 to add to 3.
No, look
That's
at this. Was my
4.
point is you wanted
1
to say,
add it's 5.
where's your halves? If you start at 1, so this is 1, 2. So what is your half star? There's your half star film. That goes right here. Goes right in this sort of 1.5.
It's not, because you have 1 here. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I
It
do
doesn't
because
work.
I have to, because your system requires that you start at 1.
It doesn't, though. That's what I'm trying to now say.
Okay, well then we're about to prove my point yet again, and I'm running out of empty space on this paper.
You're not proving your point. What I'm saying
No,
is
because
the
this is-
midpoint is
when
the
I-
actual pen stroke
if
or
we want to do
decimal.
a proper bell curve, I made that bell curve to make your example. But let's do
Sure.
it this way. Let's we go. I'm gonna make. Oh, I should have used the actual lines, because it would go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
Okay,
4.
then great.
Now watch what I do if you make bubbles or you make stars. That line up actually well. I made this a little bit bigger than it should have been. But this is what I'm saying is a bad film is unrated. I can't reach 0 because then it would just be
can't,
no
though,
bubbles.
yeah.
I can also, theoretically speaking, I couldn't technically reach 5 because that's the same thing. But here's my point. What's the halfway between this? 2.5. 2.5 bubbles.
2.5.
1, 2.5 bubbles. Half of the bell curve.
Right, but in between, your stroke of your pen is the halfway point.
But see, that's no longer math. That's metrology. You are
Okay,
trying
fine.
to say that.
So what I want to do is measure.
You're trying to say
the
that the
film.
stroke of my pen does technically take up space because it's not a perfect one-dimensional thing. And
It's
I
not
agree
even
with
about
you.
one-dimensional thing. It's about the fact that I'm trying to find an actual balance point. I'm trying to say
Yeah, but see,
the
that's what's
tipping
weird,
point. The
is
tipping
that there
point.
isn't always a balance. Sometimes
It's a
the film
balance.
is just bad. It doesn't have enough good to balance the bad.
Sure, which is why it makes it a bad film. Do you see what I'm saying? An average film should be perfectly balanced.
See,
It should have
that's-
just
but
as much bad
that's
as good.
so. I think it's odd that
So
you
if
are
you wanna
starting
use
from a mental, like, I'm imagining a physical object, be it a stick or a
So
balance
if
or
I'm
something.
incorrect and I'm using what
Like, that's what I
That-
think is odd, because to me, you're treating a film as if it is an object, like a physical thing that can be measured. And it can't be because it's abstract.
well, so
so
my
use
point
the
is-
abstract numbers.
But the stars themselves,
Forget the
I
stars.
have to actually fill out.
No, forget the stars. It
Yes.
could be any object.
No,
It
but
could- better
but then
yet,
I can't
better
forget
yet.
the stars because that's the system we're talking
No,
about.
we're not actually.
Yes, we are.
No.
That's why I'm saying
No,
it's-
because guess
your
what?
argument falls apart when you say
here's
we're not talking about the
no,
stars.
because we're not. Would you like to know? Because we've been using bubbles. These are circles.
Great, but my
so
point is,
my system
Within
is devoid of
Goodreads-
units.
but the point is, you are then forced into units when you get onto Goodreads or
Because they don't allow
Whatever.
decimals.
because they have stars. So whether or not they
well, so
allow
does-
decimals,
So does this.
so does what's it
But
called?
my point is, it doesn't matter the unit because mine is a unitless number. I'm going to look up the term for that because there is a word for what I'm thinking. Because to me,
Sure,
if I say
you
it's a
can
3 out of
apply
5
yours to
film,
everywhere.
mine is literally universal. You could take it literally whatever measuring object you
Sure.
want. Could be a 3.5 inch out of a 5-inch film. Could be a 3.5 star out of a 5-star film. Could be 3.5 thumbs up out of 5 thumbs up. I mean, you could literally take
and
anything.
I wouldn't use the same vocabulary as you.
Well, exactly.
If I'm
because
rating
mine
a film,
is unitless.
I would say
I know,
it's a
you should-
3-star film.
And I
I
should-
would not say it's a 3 out of 5 film. I wouldn't say that. I would say it's a 3-star
Well,
film.
but what you're saying, you're abridging because what you mean by a 3-star film is a 3-star out of 5-star
No,
film.
I don't. I'm not. Because
You have to because you're again a metric means nothing unless it is out of something.
my point is,
A 2 film means nothing unless I know it's 2 out of something.
what I'm saying is I am
Because that's the other
placing
point.
my finger on one particular
But here's my
thing.
point: is if you said to someone who didn't know you it was a 3-star film, they wouldn't know what you meant unless you said 3 out of 5. Because if they think, oh, 3 out of 10, that's a bad film, you have to say to them 3 out of 5-star film.
Sure.
Now, in modern, if you know the person, and
I
you're-
don't disagree
it's
that
a
if
colloquial
someone-
thing. You just say, oh, 3
if
stars.
someone
We
heard
know what
me-
we mean
My
because
sense,
you and me know what we mean. But not everyone would because again,
I
you
don't
have
think
to say,
your argument suffers from knowing that on a general populace level, that if I said it's a 3-star film, most people are going to assume that it's higher than average. My point is the way that I think about it is 3 becomes the actual sitting in the center, and I can either go down half or a full step or even a full other step and have it be a no star film if I really wanted to, or I could go up half and have it be a 3.5 or a 4 or a 5 and go up 2. if I wanted to as well.
But
again, I say your argument
But
certainly
also,
doesn't suffer from
where-
the fact that on a
where does a
populace
half-star
level,
film
you would
here
be-
go? If this is a 3, this is 2, this is 1, this is 4, this is 5. What if a film's so bad it's worse than a 1?
It's a half star.
But you don't have a half an object here. You would have to cut the object in half.
Great, so we could do that.
Which then, guess what? If you cut every object in half,
Yeah, you could
the
cut all these
midpoint
ones in half.
at that point becomes 2.5.
If I separate those two, though, there's something in the middle. Space.
No, but see, that's where I would disagree, is that there is such a thing as a geometric coterminus. Two shapes
Sure,
can share
but my
a
point
vertex,
is that coterminus is the actual midpoint.
which they both share. You're acting like they're both on the opposite sides of it. Like, here's the
they
line.
are.
No, this is where geometrically speaking you are incorrect, because there is such a thing. Two shapes can have one vertex in common, and there is no space. The vertex is a unit, is no real point. Because again, a vertex being one-dimensional, it can't truly be represented. But they can share it. It's not, here's 2.5, here's 2.5, and there's a blank space. No, there could be 2.5, 2.5, and they touch right in the middle. And they can share that line. There are geometric shapes that share one they're called coterminal or collinear or something like that. Apparently the mathematical term I was talking about is called dimensionless quantity, meaning it's a number that refers to no specific objects. It's just, because again, abstract numbers for an abstract concept, which is the quality of a film. If you are trying to weigh a film, a physical object, then yes, I understand your system would make sense, but it's not a physical thing. Why restrict yourself to physical language when the thing itself is not a physical thing?
I'm not restricting myself. I'm using a commonality of what I've used in many other
But see,
systems.
what's funny is you
look.
call it a commonality, but mine is the most universal because it has no
universal
dimension.
to the fact that you can use it across the board, but
Which makes it
commonality in that, for instance, any test you take on SAT or whatever it is, so if it's SAT or ACT or whatever it may be, you're going to deal with a 5-bubble system, more than likely. Which is the same.
But see, the bubbles aren't mathematical.
No,
the bubbles
they
represent
100%
A,
are.
B, C, D. This is
They
the
are
number.
100%
It's a choice.
mathematical. It's a choice that you have to weigh based on a scale.
But the choice,
Which is what I'm
But
doing.
the answer is not the number of bubbles. The bubbles represent what the answer would be. So they would say 2 plus 2 is option
no,
1,
I'm not talking
1,
about- I'm
option
saying,
2, 3.
I'm saying on a scale, when the bubbles represent a scale. When they say...
But see, I've never taken an SAT in which the bubbles represent the scale. The bubbles
I'm
represent option A, option B, option C, option D, option E.
No.
They're options. They stand in to represent something else.
You have absolutely taken tests that say somewhat agree, strongly disagree.
But that's not
whatever it is.
numerical. They
But
are
what I'm-
options.
but
The
what I'm
options
saying is
are
that
A,
makes it a
B,
scale.
C, D. No.
That's what I'm saying. If it
No,
anytime bubbles,
because I'll tell you what those tests are doing. Each bubble corresponds to a number that is how they calculate.
right.
So
But
it's not,
arguably then the 3 would be the midpoint.
but it isn't. It doesn't stand in for a 3. They actually will assign it's A, B, C, D. It's what are the options. The bubble is not. I rate myself 2.5 out of 5
But
of this
notice
bubble.
it's
The option
neutral.
is no. Guess what?
The one
you could say,
center is neutral.
but that's entirely convention because
It's
you
not.
could just say here. You could have it be random. It could be strongly agree, strongly disagree, agree, neutral, and then you would select the bubble. The bubble being in the middle
Sure.
is purely to represent what they mean, but
Well,
the bubble could
but
be
it-
anywhere.
But notice, and sure, you could say
And also,
that,
I'd
but
like
my
to point out,
is-
you're saying fill one bubble,
That's what
whereas
you
in
do.
this option, you're filling a whole.
and that's where I say those dictate. When I say a 3-star film, I would just literally go right there, and then there's 2
and then
empty
you'd leave 2
spaces on either
blanks. And
side.
but see, no one on Earth, if they saw that represented visually, would know what you meant.
I agree. I'm
So,
not
well, there
disagreeing
you
with
go.
that. I'm not disagreeing with that. What I'm saying is the way that I think about it is in it. I think that
You
metrology
think of it like
is definitely.
temporospatially, which is
Yeah.
weird because films don't take up physical space.
Well, but what I'm
so
saying
why represent
is the
them
reason
in
they
physical
put
space?
neutral in the middle on those tests is because it makes logical sense.
Conventional.
That you have
yes, but not mathematical
strongly
sense.
agree or
It does
somewhat
because
agree.
mathematically speaking, it could be anywhere on this thing. It doesn't need to be in the
I
middle.
suppose.
That is merely option A, option B, option C. Option C is equal to neutral.
Sure.
But it could just as easily go
But
neutral,
then if you go back to
agree,
mathematical
disagree.
and you put 3 in the middle, it does. The 4 or the 5 can't just be in wherever space that they decide to be. They have to be behind the 3, in that it's, okay, 4 and then 5.
But see, this is my point, is you're starting from a non-mathematical concept, such as bubbles on a spectrum, a division of a giant log, and then you're attempting to say, okay, how would I represent this physical thing in numbers? That's a meteorological question.
Okay.
That is
fine.
what metrology is how do I represent a physical thing mathematically?
To me,
My point is,
saying
since
what
the film is not a physical thing, I don't have to start with a physical thing and represent it numerically. I can jump straight to the numerical representation because it doesn't have a physical correspondence.
See, my issue is it does, though, because I'm looking at stars.
I guess
And that's where I say the language of that
but
does
see, then
matter.
I guess if you weren't looking at the stars and you were simply saying out of 5, how many numbers would I give this?
Yeah, then
This
I
is
probably
my-
would say 3 is more than...
But see, this is my point is, again,
Average.
you're focusing on the stars, I'm focusing on the 3.
Sure.
And that's where I guess I don't understand why you'd focus on the stars, because a film being rated by stars
Because that's
is completely...
it's a star system.
Well, but that's
What
completely...
we're discussing is within the 5-star system.
But that is
how do
completely
you actually rate?
arbitrary.
It's not arbitrary.
Well, it is, because
It's language.
It could just as easily... Culture could have evolved such that we call it a circle. It's a
It
5
doesn't
ring
matter.
film.
But the point is,
Well,
if
that's
I'm
my
looking
point.
at something,
No, I agree. It doesn't matter. It's
the
arbitrary.
object doesn't matter. It's still an object, and it's there. I'm looking at it. So then it has a physical representation.
I
Therefore,
suppose,
so maybe I'm just a hardcore meteorologist,
I
but
think you. This would seem to describe to me that you struggle. Like, you don't think abstractly. You think temporospatially, I guess would be the way of it. Saying it.
if something is physically in front of me, I have to make sense of it physically. I can't make sense of it abstractly. If it's in front of me, if it's a 5-star system that I am looking at and observing, I have to actually make sense of it.
Let's see, you would be thrown off if it was just a 5 system. Because 3 out of 5 is the same as 3 stars out of 5 stars, but you would be thrown off if it was just out of 5? Like no star, no nothing, just out of 5?
Not specifically. I would just probably not use the same perspective. Like in that point, that would be like a 2.5 would be the halfway point in that regard. Because
Well, so again, I'm speaking. At least
but
then
notice though,
that I am the mathematically correct one.
I don't concede that my midpoint concept is incorrect. It's not.
Well, it is
the
incorrect
midpoint of 1
mathematically.
between 5 is 3.
It only if you start at 1 and end at 5.
No, if you're...
No, we
if you're
just
talking
described
about,
it. If you
look,
start at 1 and end at 5, 3 is the midpoint.
If I have...
You start at 1, 2, 3,
right,
4, 5.
because you have to use 5.
Again, because we're limited to the physical concept.
Right, so 3 is your midpoint. So in that regard, I'm
But
not...
again,
and I'm not erroneous
This
in
is
my...
not abstract.
In
though.
my
This
mathematical...
is not it's erroneous
It's
in the
not.
sense...
It's geometric, certainly, and yours is more
Mine is
universally able to be applied. So I don't disagree that I tend
But
to
my
err
point is,
on...
your system would not work without physical representation. Whatever
That's not
that
true.
physical representation is up to choice. You could make it 3 out of anything.
It wouldn't.
But your your
absolutely
system would require it be 3 stars, whereas my system is just 3 out of 5. Again, the fact that you have to
doesn't.
write it shows that it has to be physical.
No, it doesn't.
You have to represent it. Yes, you've just represented it physically by doing that. Whereas I could tell you 3.5 out of 5. And it doesn't need physical representation. It has value simply by existing. I haven't even gotten into the... I was going to give you a whole lot more credit because I was going to go into some of the discussion because I was going to meet you on your turf. And then you decided your turf was somewhere else.
It's not somewhere else.
Because I was at least going to try to get into, like, okay, if you're talking about travel, like...
I am talking about travel, and I used the term of a scale. If you put the scale in the middle of a pendulum, if you use a pendulum idea and you say, I either can shift to the 2 on, or the 2 positives on the one side, or 2 on the negatives on the other side.
But what if it's a half-star film?
Then you have
You have to go
that as
further backwards than you could go. You would have to be going between 1/2 and 5.5.
No.
Because again, agree. Here. If you wanted to go 1 star or 1/2 a star lower than 1, in order to equalize this, in order for 3 to stay in the middle, if you go 1 more here, you have to go 1 more here. So now you have a 1/2 star to 5.5 star system, in which 3 is still your midpoint. you can do that. It's just kind of weird. If you were to say it's a half star out of 5.5 stars, people would be like, why? Why not just make it something out of 5 or something, or round up, make it, because technically half a star out of a 5.5 star system would be a 1 star out of 11. That's a weird integer, but it makes sense. You could say it's a 1 out of 11, but most people, because we think the way we rate things fractionally is out of an even number, like it's usually out of 5 or 10, so you could say 1 out of 11.
I don't need to say 1 out of 11.
You do.
No, I'm not.
Okay, this is your 1, this is 5. You want 3 to be in the middle. 3 is currently in the middle. But that's
because you've dictated that 5 is one of the barriers. It's not, or the boundaries. It's not.
It is.
Because
this is 5
at that point, you have made the bell curve in.
This is your barrier. 5 is your barrier.
No, what I'm saying is at that point, you have made the bell curve unequal on either side. It's not the same equidistance. No,
yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Absolutely. Okay. This is your argument. I am representing your argument here.
Look.
3 is in the middle of 1 and 5.
Great. Here's the bell curve. And I have to put 6 and 0. So I can use 1 and 2, 3, and 4.
Well, okay. Do you realize this is exactly what I'm saying. I was just getting there slower. No. Because look at this. You have 1 and 5. 3 is in the middle. If I go half a star out, it's half a star to 5.5. I go one more half star, 0 to 6. I've just made your argument for you.
No, I haven't.
Yes! 1 out of 5. 3 is in the middle. If I want half a star on this side, in order to keep equal, I have to add half a star here. You agree? Thus, I go from 1.5, or I go from half of a star to 5.5 stars. If I want to add another half star on this side, to keep it balanced, I have to have another half star here. So now it's 0 to 6.
But this is where I say then, again, 2.5 and 2.5. At that point, I go,
so this, but my point is, in order for this to make
of those two.
But this is what I think is odd, is that in order for this to make sense, you have to use an odd scale. Most people don't rate films from 0 to 6. So
that's true.
In order to get your midpoint, you have to use a system most people would.
And I'm not suggesting that you need to use a 0 to 6. What I'm saying is that if you're going to use a 2.5 representing the halfway point, to me, the actual median is not 2.5. Because I want to be able to go down exactly 2.5 or up exactly 2.5.
Well, exactly.
If it's less than average, I want to be able to go down to a degree or up to a degree. Rating a film as an average as 2.5, I'm like, no, because there has to be something in between those 2 points.
This is where I'll concede this element, and I suppose I disagree with your insistence on it has to travel equally. I think, again, mathematics...
It's an equidistance thing, and
yes,
I think it is...
And here's what I'll concede, that in your example, if 3 is your midpoint, then in order to reach half a star, you have to subtract 2.5 stars from 3, mathematically speaking. But if you add 2.5 stars to 3, you end up at 5.5. That's kind of weird.
In that regard, I understand what you're saying.
So instead of doing what you're doing, where you give a half a star extra space at the bottom, you have to acknowledge you're doing that.
I am doing that. Yeah.
I choose, because to me, what makes a film interesting is if it's good. If it's a bad film, I'm not going to spend that much time thinking about specifically how bad.
Sure.
So if I have to include half a star's extra distance, I'm going to put it on the upper end. Because to me, that gives me more nuance on the stuff I care about. It means that I can be more precise about things I like than things I dislike. This is why I'm going to speed through my final arguments, because this is precisely what I thought we were going to be talking about. Because to me, think about it this way. This is my defense of my doing it my way. If we concede that you're going to have slightly unequalness depending on your scale, if we insist on it 0 to 5. If we make your 0 to 6, you could do that, but again, you'd have to explain that to people then, rather than just saying 3.
That, again, I say, and therein lies the crux really of your argument, is that mine certainly does not make sense to a general populace. That is true.
Sure.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I still think that mine makes sense in that it's a more balanced scale of how to rate them, because there's 2 on either side. But that is very much a visual representation.
Sure, but this is precisely why we have things like numbers, is because back in the day, you'd have a foot, which usually genuinely meant a person's foot. Or you could, the example they give you for anything is like, okay, take a stick. Whatever size the stick is, you can measure any building by numbers of this stick. But anyone who doesn't have this stick has no clue what you mean when you say it's 10 sticks. So you, in order to convey your opinion to someone, have to tell them it's 3 of these sticks. And then they have to take that stick and go, okay, I guess I see what you mean. But if they don't have your stick, that doesn't make sense.
Sure.
That's why, for me, I'm dividing by the stick. It's 3 sticks out of 5 sticks, which means you don't need the stick. It's 3 out of 5 of anything. 3 out of 5 pens, 3 out of 5 stars, 3 out of 5 miles even. I mean, you could make it of anything. That's why dimensionless numbers are useful, because they don't require the object of measure.
Yeah, they don't require object.
Because measurement, of course, will always be inferior to abstract numbers, because measurement can never achieve abstract numbers perfectly. That's the Adam Savage point, is in the real world, we can't have perfect dimensional things. It's always within this, it's always plus or minus this much. So I'm saying, since a film is abstract and doesn't require a physical measurement, why not jump straight to the abstract number where I can be as precise as I want without the need of some third-party mediator?
Well, and my thing is, on a visual level, it makes more sense to me to go, again, there's a center point in which it tips to one side or the other. The 2.5, to me, and now, I understand what you're saying on an integer level, like that the minute you get fractions involved, that there is I'm erring to one side in that I go, okay, I have a half a star if something's really not good at all, and it's not even worth a 1 star. But then you have all the way up to 2.5. But then to me, I go, the point, yeah.
These 2 triangles share that point?
Yes, but that point is the
It can't be
middle
divided.
section.
No, that point, mathematically speaking, is not a physical object that can be divided. It is literally an infinitesimal point in space.
Right, and it's
Do they
3.
still share it?
Yes, of course they share.
Which
because
means,
it's 3.
yes, but if you could not, my point is, you could not separate this triangle without creating another point. Because what you're thinking is the midpoint is like this. These 2 triangles are very close to each other, but there's a dividing line between them. That is created
What
1,
I'm
2,
saying-
3, 4, 5, 6 vertices. There's 3 points. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because they are coterminal. These 2 points are 1 point. They are one and the same, geometrically speaking. That is geometrically possible.
I understand that, but my point is that's 3. You just
Well,
demonstrated
yes,
my
because
argument.
it starts at 1 and goes to 5. There's no 0 on this.
So again, I say that's fine. I don't disagree with the fact that I
All
don't
I'm
know that
saying
I've
is
ever.
Your geometric argument does also start to fall apart if you also look at it as geometrically there are shapes that can share a vertices.
But
and
my
that vertices does not count for 2 just because 2 shapes use it. It's still 1.
I understand that. My point is,
Like this,
I
you
can
can't
still go
divide
down
it
a full. I can still go down 2 full vertices
and end up at 1. You would
and
not end up
up
at 2.5. Uh-oh. We've talked so long the Xbox is turned off.